The tiered salary system, video number 2. This video will describe computerized matching markets and how they can benefit professional sports. Matching markets are used in a number of labor markets, pairing groups such as workers and employers or schools and applicants. A matching algorithm achieves the best pairing using preferences from both sets of participants. This differs from the amateur draft in professional sports, where preferences are only considered from one side. Stable matches and safe selections are very important goals of a proper market design. Stable matches mean there are no pairs of participants that prefer each other more than what they got in the matching market. When students apply to schools, there may be some students who wanted a different school and schools who wanted a different student. However, if a matching market makes stable matches, there will be no pairs that wanted each other more than what they got in the match. There's another way to describe stable matches. If the matches are stable, there are no sets of participants who want to cut a deal outside the match. The match should give them the best results they can get. Safe selections mean you won't get a worse match because you stated your true preferences. Using a football example, safe selections means that the Dallas Cowboys wouldn't make their chances worse for matching Dak Prescott if they tried to match Patrick Mahomes first. This point is absolutely critical. If the algorithms are correct, you just pick who you want, and trying to get an unlikely choice doesn't hurt your chances to get a more realistic selection. Safe selections doesn't mean you get exactly who you want, but safe selections mean you don't have to use gamesmanship or a crystal ball to get the best match. You just have to choose who you want, and you will get the best match possible. In typical matching markets, there are two sets of participants, for example, students and schools. After the whole evaluation process, the students make a list of schools in order of preference, the schools make a list of students in order of preference, and then all the lists are submitted into a computer. The computer applies the correct pairing algorithm and does the matching. From the standpoint of the participants, they simply turn in their lists and the computer says where all the students are going to go to school. Let's run through a very simplified matching market using high school quarterbacks and colleges as our example. For illustration purposes, I'm ranking the quality of the quarterbacks based on their pro success, but they are just finishing high school. You have 3 quarterbacks, the future Hall of Famer, the solid starter, and the one without success. You have 3 schools, the football elite, the solid program, and the chronic underachiever. The quarterbacks and schools all make rank lists which are listed beneath their names. All 3 quarterbacks, being stars in high school, want to go to Alabama, Washington, and Kansas in that order. Alabama and Washington want Peyton Manning. Kansas, probably not feeling Peyton Manning would be happy there, put Dalton first and Manning last. The rank list gets turned into the computer, so all the matching that happens after this point is within the computer only. The first thing the computer will try to do is give each school their top choice, which is Manning for Alabama and Washington, and Dalton for Kansas. Manning can't go to 2 schools, therefore Manning's ranked list is used to state his preference between the 2 schools, which is Alabama. Manning is removed from Washington's list and remains with Alabama. For illustration, I'm going to show you the wrong algorithm. The wrong algorithm would be to say Manning is committed to Alabama and Dalton has already been selected by Kansas, so Leaf goes to Washington. The result of this improper algorithm is an unstable match. Dalton would prefer Washington to Kansas, and Washington would prefer Dalton to Leaf. Thus, Washington and Dalton would be incentivized to cut a backroom deal instead of accepting the match results. It's also an example of unsafe selections. Washington ended up with Leaf instead of Dalton because they chose Manning ahead of Dalton. If they had been more realistic and chose Dalton first, they would have gotten him. Thus, they were penalized for going with their true preference for Manning. Now let's look at the right way to conduct the match. Let's go back to where the two schools wanted Manning. Manning prefers Alabama to Washington, so Manning is deleted from Washington's list. The correct next move would be to go to Washington's next choice, which would be Dalton, even though he has been already assigned to Kansas. Dalton is now in a similar position to the situation Manning was earlier. Dalton has been picked by two schools, but prefers Washington to Kansas. Therefore, Dalton is deleted from Kansas's list. Kansas has to reselect and selects Leaf, which is next on its list, and the match is complete. Selections being reassigned to more favorable pairings within the algorithm is an essential step. It is important to understand that the algorithm will try to give each participant its best pairing without consideration for whether the pairing took place earlier or later in the match. The important issue is which pairing is higher on the rank list. This keeps selection safe because participants aren't penalized for listing unrealistic choices ahead of more realistic ones. The unrealistic choices may not be matched, but it won't give the participant a worse match. Selections being reassigned to more favorable pairings later in the algorithm is an essential step. Because you don't know the final pairings until the end, this method has been called the deferred acceptance algorithm. The proof for why the deferred acceptance algorithm results in stable matches resulted in the 2012 Nobel Prize for Economics. These principles have never been applied to professional sports. An appropriate matching market can completely resolve the many problems that are associated with long-term contracts, yet provide more stability of player movement than free agency. A matching market can also be much easier than free agency to use for both teams and players. Video number 3 will show you exactly how a matching market can be made for professional sports.